All right. Apologies. Starting a bit late, but I hope I hand on time. So, hello friends. This is my first time presenting at B-Sides, and it's with great pleasure that I stand before you on this reasonably sized stage to talk to you about some challenges that we face in open source. First, a small introduction for those of you who don't know me. That's me. I'm the speaker, it's me. So I'm an engineering manager at Canonical, and in my day-to-day, I coordinate security maintenance for 15 years, just announced yesterday, for all Ubuntu LTS releases. So I'm maintaining packages from 2014 until the present. And whenever I have some spare time, I also like to do board gaming and, yeah, trying to boil the never-ending, ever-growing vulnerability ocean one spoonful at a time. As for the middle of the night, well, I was up making these slides. I do not speak with my slides. Those who speak with their slides have forgotten the face of their elders. I speak with my heart, and I left the slides to the last minute because I believe in the heart of the cards. So here we go. Now to set up some ground rules. Ground. Oh, sorry about that. Some quick ground rules so that we understand each other during this presentation. All the opinions expressed are exclusively my own and do not necessarily reflect the views of my employer. They do, however, reflect my experience working there. So, as I said, I do vulnerability management for a distro, so bear with me, we're gonna talk a bit about it. And yeah, my slides are ugly, but they're always made with love. Anecdotes are not data, but they do reflect my experience. And data should be accurate except when using hyperbole for flair. So please keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times, but I will be requiring your arms in a bit, and let's go. So what is the status quo? Show of hands, how many of you have used open source software? I'm gonna pretend I'm seeing because I can't see anything. There's a light over there shining in my eyes, and I wear glasses, but this is what I expect the audience to be like. Everybody just put your hands up. If you didn't raise your hand, you're probably just not aware of what I'm saying. I see you there in the laptops and scrolling on your phone, or, well, just lying for the lulz. That's quite sus of you, but alas, let's keep going. It is a security conference after all. So open source code is in pretty much everything. The numbers vary between studies and methodologies on how you're determining if something uses open source, but it's generally over 90%. You'd be hard-pressed to find a study that says that open source usage is not at 90%. For all practical purposes, there's some open source software in every bit of a supply chain. For those that have been to the US or live there, it's the high fructose corn syrup of software. It's cheap, it's plentiful, you put it in everything. So measuring the ecosystems is also a very difficult target. Like packaging ecosystems are in constant growth. These numbers are from 2024, and the exact second that this slide was created, they were already out of date. Ecosystems like NPM, for which I have great disdain, please, but I must give it credit, are pushing the growth of packages to incredible numbers. Every single day, there's thousands of packages being created, and the ecosystem just continues to grow. The horde must grow. GitHub as well is a good indicator of this. GitHub hit 100 million users even far before. They predicted they would hit 100 million users in 2025. They hit 100 million users in 2023. You still go on GitHub and you find a lot of repos with 1 or 2 commits or the same copy-pasted template apps, but it's a show that people are joining in, that they want to contribute, and they want to share code. On the latest Octoverse report, they described that a new developer joins GitHub every second. So in the time that I've been on stage, their numbers have once again grown. By the time I finish the talk, we'll have a bunch more other developers there, and AI leads TypeScript into being the #1 language. ONPM, oh, I hate thee, but it is what it is. So how do I think about open source? And to that, I ask you, what is it that you truly desire? Let's say that you want a train running across your terminal every time you mistype ls as SL. Well, all aboard, there's probably a package for that. There goes a train. I'm not going to skip this slide. I want to see the train get there. It is very important to me that the train gets there. All right, we got there. So cool. Yes, indeed. Open source is so cool indeed. But it's not without its challenges. Like many of you are probably looking at that thing, but why does a package exist that does that? And that is the core question that creates some challenges regarding open source sustainability. I believe the ease of access to it is a double-edged sword. It's great, it's ubiquitous. There's something for everything that you might need, but it also creates a challenge given the way that humans work and think about things. Jen's wonderful presentation yesterday talked about the hacking scene. Who here remembers the other scene, the Juarez one? Remember those terms over there? Were you a courier, a trade, or did you just go, oh, this movie is finally out. Maybe I'll go download it and watch it without thinking about all the parts that are involved in making it show up? Streaming sites really did a number on groups with the mass availability of everything. Somebody's in my ear saying that I need to switch example. All right, neutral corporate frog, I'll acquiesce. Do you ever think where fruit comes from, or do you just eat it? Like one of the core challenges that we face in open source is that it's sometimes taken for granted, as if it sprouted from the ground, fully formed, and wasn't the result of a painstaking, selfless task of building, and more than that, wanting to share software. People don't know where their open source comes from, or even that they're using it sometimes, and let me just be very clear, that's all right. But it falls to some of us to hold up the front on those matters and make sure that people are not forgotten as part of this process. Because open source is made of people, figuratively. Not literally, figuratively. Open source is made of people's hopes, dreams, and selfless abnegation to contribute something for the greater good. So let's talk about that. How does open source come to be? And for that, we got to think about, well, again, people. Not all people, of course. Like, this is a graph of the world's population. As you can see, it continues to grow. Some of those people are probably joining GitHub right now, at this very second that it passed. While the world population keeps increasing, and the amount of packages that we have keeps increasing as well, maintainers aren't keeping pace with that. And maintainers are what makes things go round. More explicitly, maintainers are like DACA, and you always need more DACA. Demand for maintainers of packages outstrips supply by a lot. And that creates one of the core challenges one of many core challenges that we have nowadays in open source. To provide a more direct example here. So look at these two people. You likely recognize one of them right off the bat. Curl is one of the most, if not the most popular open source project. It's well-funded, well-operated, and its leader, maintainer, has been widely acknowledged for their contributions. Daniel, or as he is known, Badger, has received a lot of accolades for the work that he's been doing in terms of open source. On the other hand, we have rsync, which probably as we speak right now is like syncing a bunch of content and packages from distro from one side to the other. And it's essential to how many servers back up their contents, and yet has a single maintainer, Andrew. How many of you recognize him? No hands? Good. Because indeed, that's not Andrew. It's just some AI-generated face. Doesn't change the fact that maintainers end up being underappreciated and underrecognized unless their projects are out there and very visible in terms of how they publicize themselves. Glad I didn't have to use this GIF. Okay? So, maintaining a package is quite challenging in itself. Lack of maintainers is not a new issue. It's something that is as old as open source itself, right? In the beginning, and still as of now, it requires a lot of selfless abnegation to like volunteer your time. In terms of people being professional maintainers, there's not that many of them out there. There's still a vast swath of open source that is maintained by people simply volunteering their time to build packages. As you can see there, that's a thing that ends up being mentioned. Oh, why don't you have something shared on GitHub? Well, I have nothing on GitHub because I mostly write code that makes money. Open source tends not to make money. And that is indeed a situation that contributes to this crisis in terms of having maintainers join us. So economic pressure is one of them. Lack of incentive is another. In a sense, how many of you here would be compelled after this talk to go look for a package that is without a maintainer? There's a number of sites that aggregate these and pick it up. We'll talk a bit more about that later down the presentation, but you probably are thinking, well, this weekend I have things to do, and then there's that thing at work, and then the quarter is almost over. It is hard. It does require a lot of dedication. There's also lack of support structure. For example, understanding how can you become a maintainer? How can you just walk into a project and start making your contributions? There's some guides to that, but it still requires that you put a concentrated effort of it. And in the end, sometimes, as I said, regular life gets in the way. Like I work in open source, but once the clock hits 6 and I've done my 40 hours a week, do you think I spend my weekends maintaining packages? Well, I do, but that's the thing that I do. I don't expect everybody to just go, yeah, I'm going to spend my extra time doing more work, in a sense. I spend your weekend doing other things. So indeed, maintaining an open source package requires a mix of dedication, strong knowledge, availability, and selflessness. And we have some metrics that also tell us that. Like you can go to something like Rupology, the packaging hub, and you can see that, for example, that's a sort of the top 10 list of projects that they track by list of maintainers. You see at the 10th, there's like 500. It starts dropping significantly after that. Most of the things that are listed have 1, 2 maintainers. If they have 3, we're happy. Like Lua, which has been used to build a lot of very important software, Hades being one of those, I believe, what a fantastic game, only has 3 authors that do all of the maintenance for it. It's amazing that they can make it work, but for large-scale projects, it is something that is perhaps difficult, especially if you're covering a lot of things. Lua here is clearly a passion project, and I wish them all the health that they continue it. The other thing is, like, for example, like Rupology is a good example of this, but Rupology is not a complete repository of all of this information. It's very hard to track the entirety of open source. As I mentioned about the packaging environments, the moment that you think that you have a complete record is the moment that something new showed up and you're no longer accurate. We currently don't have a really good method to have like a complete picture of open source. We have some data here, some data there, and we can make educated guesses on what the status is. It is clear the case of like the lack of maintainers, but for example, if you were to ask me how many people currently right now maintain at least one package actively, the actively part is going to trip you up because it's very hard to determine, okay, perhaps they are associated with a package that is crystallized and doesn't need any new maintenance. Perhaps they're juggling 50 different commitments and they haven't had time to get to this one yet because it's non-priority. Determining these things and how we measure them to get like an accurate result are challenges that we still face. The distros face it, the ecosystem faces it, like even all the proprietary ecosystems face it. And yeah, it puts us in a situation where we know there's something missing, but it's very hard to quantify exactly how much. So let's talk a bit more about this thing about maintainers. Sometimes there's a pernicious incentive to contribute, anything at all. Like saying, oh, you should do some open source contributions has been parroted as a way to find employment. But it ends up creating an idea that, oh, you just have to put something out there, whatever it is, which creates challenges for the projects themselves that are trying to, let's say, onboard 100-something new developers that are coming in every day because their project got flagged as saying, oh, this is a great new project to start throwing out commits. But later down the line, I'll talk about some of the new challenges that are that are being presented by that. Other times, even if you do contributions, you might not even secure a job using the very thing that you created. That's Sebastian Ramirez. He created Fast API, and you, of course, couldn't get a job because it required 4 years of experience with the thing that he created. It is, of course, very tongue-in-cheek there, but it does reflect a situation that one of the core things with being an open source maintainer is that perhaps, unless you're looking for a job in a company who's, well, in that business, it may be very hard for you to get employment by using that open source maintenance experience as your foot in the door. I have this example here. I believe that one of the other examples was the fellow that built Homebrew, that also had a similar experience where he interviewed at a company and they went, oh no, that's not going to work out. Like, you built your own pet project, and that's a thing. For those of you who are not in the know, Homebrew is very much how you do an APT package installation experience in Mac OS. So, as a whole, maintaining an open source package is, well, here's an artist's depiction of what it generally looks like. This is barge haulers on the Volga from Ilya Repin. It's very much pulling things along at great cost. So now that we've gotten into that mindset, what do you think, and this is for the crowd, what do you think might be the number 0 maintenance burden for packages? Already start at 0, folks. Does anybody want to hazard a guess? This is a security conference. It's a big clue. Well, like fleas on a dog, CVE numbers. Right now, a lot of projects are getting, CV assignment has continued to rise, and we've seen a massive growth last year in the number of assignments. Like you can see the jump from 2023 to 2024, and we're on track to beat that number extensively in 2025. So more and more things, more and more security issues, and things that look like security issues, are getting identified and placed into projects. And those become the number 1 burden. Because yes, it's really nice to build new features. Yes, it's really nice to get something new out there. But if you have 3 or 4 CVEs assigned against your project, those jump the queue in terms of priority. Features have to take second place while you try to address this, lest your passion project or your corporate project or something of the sort become something that is no longer favored, because it's like, oh no, they aren't fixing the CVEs, we got to move the things. So, being very clear, having more CVE IDs assigned is a good thing, although there are still some issues to iron out. For those of you that don't know what DVWA is, it's the Damn Vulnerable Web App, which is a training tool for, teaching about vulnerabilities. Somebody somehow was able to put up an advisory against it saying, oh no, this training tool that is purposely vulnerable has a vulnerability. Who would have guessed? It is indeed a surprise, but as I said, we still have some kinks to iron out, but we are working collectively towards it to have CV assignments be well verified, and to crunch down on these records that just show up and make no sense. Assignments as a whole are growing fast. Certain CNAs lead the pack. It's things like PatchStack, WordFence, or my dear favorite, kernel.org, who creates, as working in a distro, as you can imagine, it's quite an interesting challenge when the kernel.org is just pumping out about an average of 14 CVEs, I believe these were Greg Slayer's numbers, a day, and we got to address all of them across all the kernels that we carry. Indeed, CV assignment grows as package numbers grow. So the more packages you have, stands to reason that you'll have more CVEs assigned to them, because it's linearly more, you have more code. And if you have more code, well, you're going to have more vulnerabilities in the midst. But while these are riding the same wave, what about the whole ocean that sits behind it? Are we growing in capacity in terms of being able to resolve these? Because identifying a CV is one thing. What about being able to address it? So Jerry isn't here, but this is from one of the things that he built. He sadly couldn't attend this B-Sides. This is from cnapulse.org that he built, and it shows exactly what we're saying. There are CVEs that are growing in the number of things that they are assigning. They're WordFence and PatchStack are, I believe, going to be the number 1 and number 2. And we keep getting more and more things. But yeah, the vulnerability reporting being on the rise isn't being met with maintenance, and that is something that ends up on my desk. As somebody that does vulnerability management for a distro, a lot of times we have to talk with maintainers, we have to talk with upstream projects to try to figure out solutions for issues that affect the distro and are coming across our desk in terms of, yeah, we got to solve this because we're installing millions of servers across the world. We need to get things sorted out. So I'd like to share some small anecdotes from my experience. As I said, it's anecdotes, it's not data. We don't really have much hard data about this, but they do reflect some experience that I've had in terms of dealing with these things. Some are simple, some are more complex, and they're not hard guidelines. They're more of a pirate's code of things that I'd like to see happening. So let's start. So one of the things that It's really annoying, like when you go up to a project and you plop down an issue in plain view with a full reproducer, when you know for sure it's a security issue. It's one thing to like put down the logs and say, oh, I found this thing, I don't know what it is a capture. The other is, I already know that this is a security issue and I'm gonna plop down a reproducer. If the project doesn't have a way to like hop on that very quickly, it's gonna create an issue because, like, yeah, people that are malicious actors are paying attention to these things, perhaps more than project maintainers because they're very busy, and they're gonna start the ways to weaponize this. So please, if you have one of these things in hand, see if the project offers private reporting. It's something that you can enable on GitHub or many other source management things where you can discreetly message the people in charge and say, hey, I have this finding, I think it might be security related. Can we discuss this before we go public with it? If they don't have that enabled for some reason, try alternative means of communications because before disclosing openly as a last resort. In essence, use all possible avenues of communication before just plopping things down there, because it doesn't benefit anyone except the attackers when, well, here is the full reproducer for your thing, and they start immediately weaponizing the exploits. Next up. Fix this for the projects. Fix things as quickly as possible. Issues, CV assignment, somebody will figure out eventually. We had a situation dealing with this with a project that shall not be named, better in this case. But they said, oh, this bug has been fixed some point between the 2.4 and the 2.44 releases. It was, I believe, a 9.5 CVSS, a critical finding, and indeed, it had been fixed between those two releases. But if you diff them, to see how much had the project changed between them, it had 1,667 commits, more than 5,000 files change, and no CVE reference, as the CVE was published way, way, way after the thing had been corrected. This, of course, created the challenge of, we know there's a vulnerability, we know that it has been corrected, but now we got to go digging and try to find the patch, because when we do patches and when we do backports, our goal is to like just pull the minimum amount of necessary code rather than pull all the changes in. And this, of course, created a challenge. So the team was able to do it at some cost. So the idea here is that projects, please use CV IDs to communicate what has been fixed, where and how. It might require you to go back and change a message or put a note somewhere that says, oh, this commit actually fixed this thing. But please, make everyone have a clear understanding of where the issue is, what's its impact, and what it's emanating from. Because that's how we get a good idea of exactly what is the minimum set of fixes that we need to pull so that we can pull them into the versions of the packages that we have without being disruptive. Next up, let's say you're a reporter. Send in a fix immediately in a public PR. Be cryptic. Don't say what you're doing. Say, literally this, the onomatopoeia for, this isn't good. Like, because this can create an issue. Let's say that the fix that this person is proposing goes against how the project wants to fix the issue. Let's think about the talk that we had about the 64-bit time thing. Let's say that this person detects an issue, and rather than saying, oh, I want to change things to use the 64-bit struct, no, they just remove every single time call and go, whoop, no code, no vulnerability. No, that's not how these things should be done. If you are submitting a PR to a package, and it's like your first time doing it, work with the maintainers if you wish to contribute to the fix. Agree on a strategy for it and how to test it. Make things are properly identified so you still align. Like, unless you're going to take over the package and you're going to maintain it for the foreseeable future, it is a good thing that you should do is to align in how the core maintainers that are going to be handling your fix after you leave are going to manage the package going forward. You don't want them to be taking on technical debt. Again, one for the projects. If you get a report from somebody, maybe an enterprising researcher here in this room, keep all information to yourself. Loose lips sink ships. And this might seem sound on the surface, but let's consider how much of open source operates. Like, there are situations where, due to licensing hazards, projects that are, well, semi-open source or something of the sort, or have particular license associated with it, may be forked, and they may have proeminent forks. if you are running a project that gets a report that you think, oh, this might affect this fork of my project, and you can determine it because you know where the issue was introduced in terms of commits, well, you should at that point consider sharing this with your fork because it benefits the community as a whole. Hoarding information does not help anybody because you're doing this now and they might return the favor later. They should return the favor later. We should be sharing this information across forks so that in that case, even the mainline package that exists and the corresponding fork all march towards security. And finally, this one is something that I have to deal almost every week. People making unreasonable demands. People need that CVE, so it shows up on their CV right now. The market is very adverse in terms of hiring, and I want to say, like, I found 50 CVEs. Please, grant me a CVE right now. And if you don't do that, I'll publish this on my blog next week. It doesn't matter that it is a very complex project that involves a lot of people, that it has a whole release cycle. I want this now. And as you can imagine, this is something that we end up getting a bit of in the distros, and we have to diplomatically manage in terms of expectations and how things are going through because, yeah, like for example, we release a new version of the distro every 6 months. Like if it's something that has to wait for 6 months for the next version to come out, it generally isn't, but let's imagine, we have to be able to manage that and not disclose things before time. So in that case, reporters should consistently set reasonable timelines based on the issue. If it's a very complex issue that affects core parts of whatever the thing is that you are reporting it against, let's say that it's not a one-line fix. Sometimes people do report things that require full architectures to be remade because, oh, yeah, we didn't think of this specific scenario. You should be able to set adequate timelines, like 90 days disclosure dates or even further. Work with the maintainers, not against them, and protect the community at large. People think, oh no, I'm going to adversely disclose this. I'm going to put this out in the public because the public needs to know. All right, but what did you achieve with that? Oh, now the public knows and they're safer. Again, how? Well, are they going to write their own patch for their own devices? Well, they could. It is open source, but that's unlikely to happen. What you just put out there is like a flag for malicious actors to see, oh, look at this new thing that I can race against the patches to start exploiting. Adversely disclosing is almost never a good option. We should always be working with maintainers to try to get to a point. If you run out of avenues with the maintainers, so like for example, the maintainers are saying, oh, we don't see this as a security issue, escalate a bit. Try to go to a distro that distributes the package and try to see if you can get an agreement there for their version that they specifically distribute to carry a patch for it. Like you're not out of avenues if the maintainers say, oh, I don't think that this is a thing, right? So these are 5 things that I really like to see more of happen in my day-to-day. Wait, do you hear this? Oh, look, it's AI Grand, reminding us that we should talk a bit about AI, given that this has been quite a trend, and how AI is going to fix all of these maintenance problems for us. Before explaining how AI is going to fix all of these maintenance problems for us, let's talk about false positives. False positives come in various shapes and sizes. They can be issues, just not security issues. There's a difference, obviously, there. They might not fit into the definition of the maintainer of what they consider to be a security issue based on their threat model. Like, for example, people say, oh, I believe it's the bin utils package. Oh, if we put untrusted input in this, it can be very dangerous. Well, yeah, the threat model for bin utils is, well, you're compiling code and you've already agreed to execute it. So yeah, untrusted input is always going to be dangerous. Like if you report something like that, it is not a thing. It's part and parcel with how the package is designed. And it can even be, well, nothing at all. And to this, I say hi to all the curl hallucinations. We'll talk about them in a bit. It also might be difficult for an understaffed project to contest a CVE or muster the motivation to do so. Like sometimes, as I said, on the farming side of things, people assign CVEs against projects without their consent or knowledge, simply because, oh yeah, I found this thing, I want to get a CVE for it, and that gets levied against the project, and smaller projects might not have the capability of like redressing that situation. You get a CVE there, it's there forever. And these false positives inevitably create compliance issues down the line. This thing here, this is the response to what is a very well-known Nessus plugin. It's the OpenSSH PCI disputed vulnerabilities that if you're running PCI DSS, this is probably going to be flagging in every single one of your servers. And it's always the same thing. Like, OpenSSH does not believe this to be a security issue, but the CV got levied against it, and they don't care to remove it. Talking about the LLM hallucinations, this is the list of bug bounty reports that are pure slop that the curl project has received. In essence, what it seems to be happening is that AI is pouring a bit of fuel and accelerating the rate at which these can be generated. It's got to go fast. You throw a piece of code into the LLM and ask it, hey, find security issues. And of course, don't forget in your prompt, you have to say, make no mistakes. At the point, that was bug bounty, but now we're getting to a point where the reports are a bit more structured and a bit more vetted, but that carries another level of consequences. These are just like some researchers creating an account and sending things to HackerOne. Well, okay, no big deal there. But here's something that just came in the news, I believe, this past week, and it's something that we should be paying attention to. FFmpeg, which is a very, very popular project and that basically has a goal of being able to play every single bit of video that you can find on the internet, is facing an issue. Like, Google has a bunch of programs running that are trying to find bugs in open source packages, and indeed, they are finding a lot of bugs in FFmpeg. FFmpeg generally tops the charts in terms of the density of CVs getting assigned because, well, it's a lot of video codecs, deals with a lot of input and output, and as you can imagine, that's fertile soil for vulnerabilities. In this case, the vulnerability that the straw that broke the camel's back was that the AI agent found a very, let's say, peculiar bug that decoding LucasArts Smush codec, especially the first 10 to 20 frames of Rebel Assault 2, a game from 1995, there's a bug there in FFmpeg. Did you play Rebel Assault 2? I see some hands there, as long as the luck, yeah. So, yeah, it is a thing. It's like, why are you sending me this? Indeed, that's the case. Why are you sending me this? Google is sending this to FFmpeg, which is a project made of entitled volunteers, and then there's an expectation of, oh, but we're reporting this, you're going to solve it. Remember, unreasonable expectations sometimes put pressure, again, on maintainers. They take security seriously. This is acknowledgedly a security bug, but the case is that in this, the case that we are finding is that, well, Google is sending in the bugs. What about patches? Oh, no. We don't do that part. We just find things. The LLM is good at that side of things, but everything else, well. And this, again, puts more pressure on maintainers. Here's another example. This is from Nick Wilnofer. He put out this message 6 months ago. At the time that I took this screenshot, they maintain libxml2 and libxslt, and basically they were finding the same thing. Like, people were submitting issues en masse to their projects, some detected with AI, and basically putting some incredible expectations that took the priority from feature development and improvement. It's basically, hey, we're submitting these things, please fix this. These are critical vulnerabilities. These are CVSS 10.0. These are being reported in the open by filing issues against the project. As soon as they're filed in the open, everybody's aware of it, and then it puts pressure on the maintainer to address that. In the long run, as they say there, putting such demands on open source maintainers without compensation is detrimental, especially for projects like these that have a single maintainer. But a bit more on that later. Again, the whole thing about, oh, how AI is going to help us do this, it's still an open question. We know LLMs can predict the next statistically likely sentence, which works well for code that has been written before. Like, if you're writing a for loop, it already knows what's coming next. Even if you're using bad names for variables, it has to be I for the loops. It can also identify issues by checking if something is not the most likely word after a sentence. But the jury is still out if it can produce novel fixes. Like, it can detect the thing, and it can also suggest a fix for it, because if it's something novel that hasn't been seen before, what is it going to base its fix on? And how confident are you on those fixes? Consider also a world where AI runs all open source projects. Let's say that we solve this issue. We have a general purpose model that can do all of these things. what would that world be like? Like if you had commodity models that can fix things and just continuously improve on the code, implementing the features, finding and fixing the bugs, all of open source could be maintained forever. Well, doesn't that sound like a pipe dream? Yeah, it's something that we still don't know. And indeed, we don't know yet. It's something that is still emerging, and we don't have good answers for these questions now. Can AI detect things? Yes, Google seems to be doing it adequately. Can AI fix all the things? We don't know yet. And whoever says they do probably has something to sell you. Speaking of that, minor rant, please stop pitching me supply chain silver bullets. Lots of things run on Ubuntu. Unsurprisingly, Ubuntu also runs on Ubuntu. I am the supply chain. Like, don't tell me you're going to fix things. It's just me. All right, now that we have addressed all of these issues, everything is awesome. We made it. Oh, hi, Barbie. Let's not forget Barbie there. Everything is awesome. Like, we're going to go to a future where AI is going to solve these issues and everything is going to be great. Yeah. You guys have to think about dying. So we get to the part of the talk that I like to call what happens to the whole when the cheese is gone? Or more precisely, what happens to vulnerabilities, to packages that simply, well, die? That is indeed one of the other challenges that is much less spoken about, because you talk about the things you see. Oh, this thing released a new version, this thing released something. But what about the packages that are still in use and like somebody forgot them, forgot the face of their elders? Well, here be dragons. This is from a while ago in March, so there's a libSPF2 library that appears to be the standard way of parsing SPF records. This is email records in C, but its development has mostly stalled. In the project GitHub repo, there's an unmerged pull request claiming to fix a use after free bug. And nothing happens from a use after free, right? Nothing ever bad happened after a use after free. Well, in this case, it's a thing for parsing SPF records in C. It's probably not in many places, but it's still a thing that is there in the repo. You can see the date there, 2016, and crickets so far. It's 2025. I think I checked this yesterday. It's still there in the same state. Another example, 2025 again, of course, and something that was reported and supposedly fixed in 2016. Oh, look, it's still there, right? What happened here? What happened with this project? Like, this is the comment from 2016 saying, oh, I submitted the fix, I tested it, and no changes. The bug is still there. And somebody, at the time, this was in March, this April 2025, ran into it and ran git bisect and saw, yeah, all versions of this are still affected. The bug is still there, it's publicly disclosed. And what's happening here? If you want to take notes of the package names for you to check later if you're using this somewhere, please, I'll share the slides later. So, I'm sure it's fine. Like, when you say this, people just go, I'm sure there's no problem. These packages aren't in any distro or repository. Nah, that's the beauty of compiling from source. It doesn't have to be. You can just search for it, go there, download the source, and build it. And anybody can add them to a repository somewhere. Like, you can create your own PyPy package from this, or you can create a wrapper package around these. Nobody is using it. You don't know that. We actually, as I said, when I pointed to Rupology, we don't have good telemetry on this. We don't really know if somebody is using this. libSPF2 is the first result when you search for C library to process SPF records. People know better than to use abandoned packages? No, people don't know better. Sometimes no alternatives exist due to circumstances, such as language constraints. Like if you need to do this in C, that's the package. So we should assign a CVE for it then. We don't know. Like, we don't know if we're not like creating a new false positive. It says that it has a use after free. Do we have enough knowledge about the package to go and check? Do we have enough knowledge to basically make a determination if it's correct? And we should anyway. Well, yeah, sure, but how do we assign this? It gets assigned to that, and then what? What's the path forward given that the package is dead? And to talk more about these packages that are dead, this is a graph from SourceForge. This is a study done in 2012 that shows how many projects in SourceForge were active and how many lay dormant in a difference of 2 years. And I hope that you see the irony here of me picking SourceForge, because the whole thing is dormant right now. Like, when was the last time that you used SourceForge? Raise of hands. Was it in the last year? No. SourceForge as a whole is full of dead projects that are facing this. So We're mere search queries away from finding orphan issues and orphan projects that just might be security related. Again, just think about the last time you used SourceForge. There are still some projects there that resist, that haven't moved into the behemoth that is GitHub. There are a lot of stuff there. Even on GitHub, as I said, it's a developer's account per second. Oh, I forgot to count how many we got during this talk, but there are a lot of accounts that were created. They committed things, and they just died off. Perhaps they created a package that got some use. Beyond the repositories that are emails to domains that lapsed, messages to forums and IRC channels that have gone unanswered, just a lot of things lost into dev null analogs. There's a lot of stuff that has been abandoned and is just there for the taking with possible security issues. And yeah. With these unconfirmed, possible, maybe vulnerabilities, orphan projects can be far more dangerous than what they appear should you bring them into your home. And it's something that people need to be aware of and sometimes are not. Like, and you think, oh, you're saying this is just for show, like this, just telling the story about orphan projects, you cherry-picked some examples. Like, how frequently does this happen? Like, it shouldn't happen that much. Like, the things that are in use should be getting attention, right? Well, no, this indeed happens every day. Remember that message from 6 months ago? Oh, look, from September. Nyquil offer. Quit maintaining libxml2. Quit maintaining libxsltt as well, because, yeah, the pressures that were being put on them were undue. These libraries are used a lot, and now they're unmaintained. Which one of you is here like willing to pick up the mantle and go maintain these massive hunks of code that deal with complex file formats? Not me. But yeah, it is indeed a problem that we just ran into recently because of this pressure. And what is like one of the possible sources of this pressure? Well, the Cyber Resiliency Act, for example. While it doesn't apply directly to maintainers, because they are not for profit, they are open source maintainers, it still results in undue pressure. Like, it places the primary responsibility on manufacturers who integrate these packages into products that sell in the EU market. So the manufacturers have obligations, performing due diligence, managing vulnerabilities, and providing SBOMs for their products, which include the open source components that they use. And this part about the managing vulnerabilities is where the rubber meets the road. Like, oh, like the maintainer themselves may not be on the hook for this, but if I bundle your package into something, think about something very common like OpenSSH, or something like that is used to parse XML, a very common file format like libxml2, you are going to be, like, if I want to bundle this into my device, my IoT thing that is getting distributed, I have to make sure that the vulnerabilities in it are fixed, and I will likely, if I won't become a maintainer myself because reasons, I will probably exert a bit of pressure on the maintainer. And for that, I have to put up the mandatory reference to this XKCD that always shows up in these things. A project some random person in Nebraska has been thanklessly maintaining since 2023. If you apply pressure to that, the whole thing crumbles. Okay, so this is fine. So what do we do now? Okay, let's try to come up with some solutions here. We're going to solve this problem before I leave this room. Spoiler alert, we won't, but you'll see. So first up, keep a watchful eye on your supply chain. If you spotted that project, call it out. Like, if you see something that is no longer being maintained, call it out and say, hey, I think this project might be gone, and we got to start thinking about alternatives. Or, on the other hand, you might also spot something that you thought, oh, this is no longer maintained, and it is. In essence, it's complicated. Like, while there are some clear signs that the project is dead and buried, so like, for example, an archive repository, a public notice of demise, or something like that, message from the maintainer saying, hey, I will no longer be maintaining this, there is no good definition of what constitutes a semi-dead project, like a zombie project that is still there. No commits for X amount of time. Well, that probably doesn't work, because just the other day, I realized that Vixicron had laid dormant for about 15 years. There's a commit in 2006, and there's a commit in 2021 from the same person. So the project just looked dead. It wasn't. It's like the dead parrot sketch, in a sense. We don't really have a good sense, as again, we don't have the good telemetry to determine, is this thing alive? Can this thing still be maintained? should we be able to rely on this for the future? So watching your supply chain is good up to a certain point, but then we kind of have to figure out our own heuristics on what are we going to trust to put into our software. Next up, it's contribute. Sponsor a project or two. Like, there are things like Thanks Dev or the GitHub Secure Open Source Fund, or even the thing where you see on GitHub profiles where you go and put a sponsor thing, or coffee, or like just send some swag to people, anything. Just provide some support of some kind, preferably monetary, because some of these people put these projects as ahead. Oh, sorry, spoilers again. It's complicated again. Because in a well-organized project with a foundation or a kind of figurehead, it's simpler to figure out where to channel the money. But take FFmpeg, for example. Like, how do you, like, it's a loosely organized group of people that live in a bunch of different countries. How do you contribute money to, like, you want to contribute money to the thing, but how do you make sure that it goes where it needs to be? And how do you make sure that it gets to the people that need it the most? It is very hard because there's no really know your customer process here for people that contribute to open source. Some of these people are very mindful of their privacy, and like you only know them by their handles or something of the sort. And they might be the core maintainers or the people pulling most of the weight. It is not a simple problem where you can just throw money down something and expect it to come out where it needs to be to have the most effect. Lastly, well, it's the other kind of contribute. Oops. My slides kind of seem to have worked a bit, but for the, sorry, I duplicated this. Become a maintainer today. Like many of you, when you leave this, people are now locking the doors. When you leave this room, there will be people with sheets out there for you to sign up for maintaining a bunch of projects. They will be assigned to you, as well as your materials to, no, I'm kidding. That's not what's going to happen. And as you'd expect, it is incredibly complicated to become a maintainer today because of an incident that is the XC utils incident. And for those of you not in the know, XC utils was a situation where a state nation actors, still unidentified, wormed their way into a very crucial ancillary project that would have allowed them, should they have succeeded, to compromise every single SSH server pre-authentication and just have free access to it. So now, if you are approaching a project to become a maintainer, I would hope that those things are held to higher scrutiny. At least that is my hope. Because as far as I see it, for open source security, there's a moment before and after XZUtils, because that incident showed how close we were to having something as fundamental as SSH servers across all distros to be compromised irredeemably, to a point where, like, how do you recover from this? The very server that you're going to try to use to boot a clean image is already compromised by it. So yeah, becoming a maintainer is now being held to higher scrutiny, which also creates a bit of a discouragement. Like, you might not want to disclose a bunch of information just for the privilege of being able to submit a PR to something. And indeed, XZUtils made things more complicated. So, as I said, we're going to solve things, but no, it's technical difficulties. We still have these problems in front of us to solve, and we will continue to work on solving them. Some of them might be unsolvable, but we have to keep trying. Like, we have to keep trying to find a way to do a way of vetting maintainers in a way that is non-intrusive and allows us to trust that they're not infiltrated agents trying to do things. We have to find a way to get funds to where they need to be to support people maintaining crucial projects that are doing it out of abnegation, because if this thing fails, the whole infrastructure of power plants or something goes down, and they don't want that weight on their consciousness. And it's also the case of, being able to identify things that have gone dead, really dead, and be able to move away from them in a clearly signaled, signposted way, saying, this project is dead. You either step up to fork it, but do not touch it further. Keep it as a memento of all the things that were done. So in that case, spread the word. You are better prepared for it now as you know a bit more about the open source space. And knowing is indeed half the battle. Thank you for your time, and I'm now open to questions.
Hey, here.
I can't see you, but we're good. Yeah, there's a light shining over there. Just
Yeah, I'll just. So we have in now our nations ways to. How is it called? I forget the word. Sorry. When someone does something wrong, right, with software, we punish them.
yes.
Do you believe that disclosure made with no concern for the maintainer for a package should be punished? Should we have regulations for that?
Ooh. Well, that ends up being a philosophy question on whether punishment should be doled out. To be reminded of the consequences of your own action is not punishment, but it does create an odd situation. Like if your adverse disclosure is a complicated topic that we're not going to solve in this comment, but I do not feel that penalties should be levied beyond reputational penalties. Like if you are working with this person, they create a reputation for themselves that if we don't acquiesce to their demands, they're going to just disclose out on us. So we can start doing the engagement going from there. Like we're still going to try to be diplomatic and try to do things for the best. Again, sometimes you can't fix things in 15 days, but in terms of legal penalties or civil penalties, I don't believe that should happen because it would create a chilling effect. It's just a case of we're doing a lot of these things out of goodwill and like good understanding between each other, and we should strive to keep a good understanding and goodwill between participants.
Great, thank you. We're just trying to be conscious of time. If anyone has further questions, please reach out to Diogo. Thank you very much, Diogo, and let's move to the next session.